Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Nathan stood at the window, gazing at the lights dancing across the Boston skyline. The night was dark, but his eyes were unusually awake. An hour ago, an accidentally discovered email completely shattered his 15-year marriage. For 15 years, he'd believed he'd built a solid family and career with Elise, and now it was all a lie. It all started on an ordinary Thursday night. Nathan returns home from working late at his architectural consulting firm to find Elise not at home. She left a note saying she was going to dinner with a friend. This in itself is not surprising, but over the past few months, such sticky notes have been appearing with increasing frequency. Nathan opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of beer, then sat down at the center kitchen island. He noticed that Elise's laptop was still open. Normally, she was always very careful to lock it, but today it seemed to have slipped her mind in her haste. The screen showed her email account. Nathan isn't one to pry into his wife's privacy, but lately Elise's behavior has become increasingly distant and secretive, raising his suspicions. He sat down in his chair, his eyes involuntarily scanning the screen. An email titled "Divorce Counseling Follow-Up" immediately caught his attention. Nathan felt a palpitation and hesitated for a moment before finally clicking on the email. Dear Attorney Reynolds, thank you for your consultation today. As I mentioned, I would like to complete the divorce process before my husband finds out about my relationship with Patrick. I believe we have access to major shares in his architectural consulting firm, our house in Cambridge, and his retirement account. I am collecting the relevant documents and will bring them with me when I meet with you next Tuesday. Thank you for your understanding and support. Elise Morgan. Nathan felt a wave of vertigo, and his fingers clutched the edge of the table. Patrick, their mutual friend, someone he often invited into his home. Nathan felt a sharp pang of nausea at the thought of Elise betraying him with Patrick while planning to plunder everything he'd worked so hard to build over the years. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He can't act on impulse. He needs to protect himself, and he needs proof. Nathan quickly forwarded the email and any other relevant communications he could find to his own inbox. He then carefully restored Elise's mailbox to its original state, making sure no traces were left behind. Nathan barely closed his eyes that night. He lay in the guest room, listening to the sound of Elise coming home late at night, listening to her walk softly into their bedroom and close the door. 15 years of memories flashed through his mind, their meeting in college, Elise's bright smile on their first date, the day they'd exchanged vows in the chapel, the countless nights spent together, sharing dreams and fears. All those memories are now clouded by the shadow of betrayal. Early the next morning, Nathan pretended to get up and get ready for work as usual. He forced himself to smile at Elise, kissing her cheek and asking her how her time with her friend had been last night. Good, Elise replied, avoiding his gaze. Just some girly gossip. Another lie. Nathan felt a tingle, but he didn't show it. He put on his jacket and grabbed his briefcase. I may be back late tonight, he said. There's an important client meeting. Elise nodded, seemingly relieved. It's okay. I have some work to take care of too. Nathan closed the door and sat in the car for a few minutes, trying to calm himself. He then drove straight to the office of Marcus Wilson, a lawyer he had trusted for years. Marcus' secretary saw the look on Nathan's face and immediately ushered him into his private office. Marcus is a veteran attorney in his 60s who helped Nathan start his company and handled all of his legal matters. Seeing Nathan's unusual arrival, he immediately put down the papers he was holding. Nathan, what happened? Nathan pushed his cell phone toward Marcus, displaying the forwarded email. I need your help, Marcus. I need to protect everything I have. Marcus read the email carefully, and the expression on his face shifted from surprise to professional calm. I understand. First of all, you did the right thing, gathering all this evidence. Next, we need to take immediate action to protect your assets. Over the next few days, Nathan worked closely with Marcus to develop a detailed plan. They start by securing Nathan's shares in the company, and Marcus helps him modify the corporate structure so that Elise can't gain control. They also contacted the bank and protected Nathan's retirement account and personal savings. It's a little complicated about the house, Marcus explains. Under Massachusetts law, as marital property, she does have a right to a portion. But considering you have evidence of betrayal, we can fight for a more favorable split. Nathan nodded, feeling a twinge of bitterness. That house was their shared dream, and now it's the battleground for a legal battle. One more thing, Marcus added. Who is this Patrick you mentioned? He's a venture capitalist and ostensibly a friend of mine. There's pain in Nathan's voice. He regularly attends our family gatherings and has discussed business opportunities with me. Marcus frowned. We need to investigate if he has any crossover with your business to see if this is a premeditated plan. Nathan agrees, even though the idea makes him feel even more miserable, not only from his wife's betrayal, but also from what could be an elaborate plot to pillage everything he's worked so hard to build over the years. On the third day, Nathan made a difficult decision. He needed to get out of Boston for a while, not only for an emotional respite, but also to implement the next phase of his plan. He arranges a business trip with his company and tells Elise that he needs to go to Seattle to meet with an important client, which could take up to 2 weeks. So long? Elise asked, a hint of the elation she was trying to hide flashing across her features. Yes, it's a big project. If successful, it will be a huge turnaround for the company. Elise nodded. Well, good luck. That night, when Elise thinks Nathan is packing, he actually installs a hidden camera in his bedroom. It wasn't something he would normally do, but in this case he needed more evidence. That's Marcus' advice. The more evidence there is, the stronger his position will be in the divorce proceedings. Before leaving the house, Nathan has a serious talk with his assistant Claire. Claire has been with his company for 8 years and is one of his most trusted employees. I need you to keep a close eye on everything that's going on with the company, Nathan told her, especially any information related to Patrick Turner. If he contacts the company, or if anything out of the ordinary occurs, notify me immediately. Claire nodded, though she was confused by the cryptic instructions. Is everything okay, Nathan? Nathan forced a smile. It'll be fine soon. I need you to keep it a secret, Claire. It's very important to the company. Early the next morning, Nathan boarded a flight to Seattle, but he only stayed there for 1 night. He then traveled to a destination he told no one about, a cabin he owned on the coast of Maine. He purchased it a few years ago as a possible retirement spot, but has never been there with Elise. The chalet is simple and peaceful, surrounded by a dense pine forest, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. From here, Nathan can work remotely while monitoring his home. The camera was attached to his cell phone, allowing him to see Elise's activities. That first night, his hunch was confirmed. Patrick Turner showed up at their home, holding a bottle of champagne. He and Elise hugged, kissed, and spent the night together in Nathan and Elise's bedroom. Nathan forced himself to watch the images, each frame stabbing him like a knife, but at the same time strengthening his resolve. It was no longer just about the words in the email. Now he saw the naked betrayal. He records every detail, the timing of each of Patrick's visits, snippets of their conversations, any discussions that might be relevant to the company or the property. This is not only to gather legal evidence, but also to get a full picture of the breadth and depth of their program. Nathan notices a disturbing pattern. Whenever Patrick leaves, Elise works on her laptop for hours. At one point, the camera catches her browsing through some of Nathan's company files, which are supposed to be confidential business documents. She's giving him inside information, Nathan whispered to himself, feeling a new surge of anger and betrayal. This goes beyond marital infidelity and goes to the heart of his career. Over the next few days, Nathan kept in regular contact with Marcus, documenting every interaction between Elise and Patrick. Meanwhile, worrying news from Claire. Patrick Turner came by the office today, she told Nathan over the phone. He said he was there to discuss a possible investment opportunity, but asked a lot of questions about the company's structure and financials. What did you tell him? Nathan asked, feeling a surge of nervousness. Only public information, like you told me. But Nathan, he seemed particularly interested in your absence and asked a lot of questions about when you'd be back. Nathan held onto the phone. You're doing great, Claire. Keep doing what I tell you and don't give away too much information. On the 10th day, Claire contacted Nathan again, this time in a more tense tone. Nathan, something strange is going on today. Someone is trying to access the company's financial server using your credentials, but from the wrong source IP. Our IT team considered it an invasive attempt. Nathan immediately contacted Marcus, who advised him to return to Boston immediately to deal with the situation. This could have something to do with Elise and Patrick's plan, Marcus warned. We need to take more aggressive steps. Nathan hesitated. Returning to Boston means facing Elise, and he's not ready. But the company was his life's work, and he couldn't let anyone destroy it. I'll go back tomorrow, he decided. In the meantime, contact a private investigator you know. I want to know everything about Patrick, his background, his business, and especially if he has any similar priors. Marcus agreed. I'll take care of it. And, Nathan, get ready for an uphill battle. If they do try to hack into your system, it shows that their plans are more aggressive than we thought. Nathan hung up the phone and walked over to the cabin window and looked out at the forest. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of trust and joint efforts, all in vain because of greed and betrayal. He felt a pang of deep sadness, but with it came a firm resolve. He won't let Elise and Patrick get away with it. They want to destroy his life, but he will prove them very wrong. The next day, Nathan quietly returned to Boston, but didn't go home. Instead, he went directly to Marcus's office, where he met with a private investigator Marcus had recommended, a former police officer named Derek. I investigated Patrick Turner, Derek said, getting right to the point. The results are quite interesting. He was ostensibly a successful venture capitalist, but his company was actually poorly run. A number of startups he's invested in over the past 2 years have failed, and his personal finances are pretty tight. Then why is he targeting my company? Nathan asked. Because it's a stable, profitable goal, Derek explains. Your construction consulting firm has a good reputation in the industry, a stable client base, and reliable cash flow. A perfect target for someone in desperate need of a financial turnaround. Nathan frowned. Do you think Elise knows about this? Derek shrugged. That's the problem. According to my research, Elise and Patrick have known each other far longer than you think. I found a record of their check-in at a hotel 6 months ago, when their relationships. It's obviously already started. Marcus interjected. So this is likely a premeditated plan to use the marriage to gain access to Nathan's assets. Derek nodded. I also noticed a similar pattern of behavior in Patrick's past. 3 years ago, he had a relationship with another married woman who happened to be the co-founder of a successful tech company. Shortly after that relationship ended, the company faced a series of internal problems and equity disputes. While there is no direct evidence linking Patrick to these problems, the timing coincidence is quite suspicious. Nathan felt a chill. This was not just marital betrayal, but an elaborate plot to plunder his company and assets. We've protected your major assets, Marcus said, but I think it's time for more aggressive action. First, we need to document all of this discovery and prepare a detailed divorce petition setting forth Elise's infidelity and possible fraudulent intent. Secondly, we need to strengthen our company's security measures to prevent any unauthorized access. Derek added. In the meantime, I will continue to investigate Patrick's background and his relationship with Elise. If they do plan to misappropriate company assets, there may be other conspirators or schemes involved. Nathan took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, let's get started. But there's one thing I'd like to take care of myself. What is it? Marcus asked, slightly concerned. I want to confront Elise myself, Nathan said calmly. Not to reconcile, but to let her know I've found out everything. I want to see her reaction and hear her explanation, if she has any. Marcus frowned. That's probably not a good idea, Nathan. It's best to avoid direct conflict until the legal process begins. But Nathan has made up his mind. I need to do this, Marcus. Not only for the case, but for myself. I need to face this betrayal before I can really move on. Eventually, Marcus reluctantly agreed, but with some conditions. At least until we have all the legal documents ready. Also, record the conversation, but don't tell her you're recording it. It might help the case. Nathan agreed to the terms and left the office for a hotel he'd never taken Elise to before. He needed time to think and prepare for the upcoming confrontation. In his hotel room, Nathan opened his laptop and checked the latest footage from his home camera. Elise isn't home, but there are signs that she and Patrick have been spending time there again recently. The sheets were disheveled, and 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table in the living room. Nathan turned off the screen, feeling a wave of nausea and anger. He took out his cell phone and sent a text message to Elise. Come home tomorrow night. Would like to have dinner with you and talk about how this business trip is going. A few minutes later, Elise replied, Great. I'll prepare your favorite roast chicken. Missed you. Nathan stared at the last 3 words and felt a pang of bitterness. Another lie, joining one of the countless others. But tomorrow night, it will all be over. The next day, Nathan spent the day at the company, meeting with key staff to make sure everything was running properly. Everyone was glad to see him back early, especially Claire, who seemed relieved. "Is everything okay?" she asked in a low voice when they were alone in the office. "It's going to be okay," Nathan replied, giving her a reassuring smile. "Thank you for looking after everything while I was away." Nathan drove home in the late afternoon, filled with mixed emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, but also a strange kind of peace. He knew what was coming next, and he was ready for it. He opened the door to his home and smelled the aroma of roasting chicken coming from the kitchen. Elise came out to greet him with a big smile on her face. She was wearing a new dress he'd never seen before, and her hair was styled. "Welcome home." She kissed him on the cheek as if everything was normal. "I miss you. How about Seattle?" "Interesting," Nathan replied, taking off his jacket. "The client was more difficult to deal with than expected, but I think we finally came to an agreement." "That's great," Elise said enthusiastically. "I've prepared dinner and your favorite red wine." Nathan followed her into the kitchen, watching her every move. She looked nervous, despite trying to hide it. Her smile was less natural, and her eyes often drifted. They sat down for dinner, and Elise talked nonstop about her activities over the past 2 weeks, mostly lies, which Nathan already knew from the camera feeds. He listened patiently, occasionally nodding or asking questions as if he didn't already know the truth. After dinner, Elise poured them more wine and suggested they relax in the living room. "You must be tired," she said, a hint of concern in her voice. "Traveling is always so exhausting." Nathan took the glass, but didn't drink. Instead, he looked Elise straight in the eye and said the question that changed everything. "How's Patrick?" Elise's smile froze, and her face turned instantly pale. "What? Patrick Turner?" Nathan repeated calmly. "My friend, your lover. How has he been?" Elise's hands began to shake, and the glass almost slipped from her grasp. "I don't know what you're talking about." She tried to deny it, but the fear in her voice betrayed her. Nathan pulled out his cell phone and played a video, footage of Patrick and Elise in their bedroom. "I know everything, Elise. Your immoral relationship and your plan to plunder my company, my house, and my pension." Elise's expression shifted from shock to fear and then anger. "You spied on me. In my own home?" "Yes, I did when I found out that you were conspiring with a divorce attorney to plunder everything I had." Nathan's voice was still calm, but filled with icy anger. Elise's defenses crumbled instantly. Her tears began to flow, but Nathan no longer believed those were real emotions. "Nathan, I can explain," she began. "Things are not what they seem." "Oh," Nathan sneered. "So tell me, what did you really mean when you wrote, 'I want to take his business, his house, and his pension before he finds out about my affair'?" Elise's mouth dropped open in surprise. "Did you read my email?" "Yes, when you carelessly leave them on an open computer. This could be the only mistake in your and Patrick's plan." Elise's attitude suddenly changed. She wiped away her tears, and her face turned cold and hard. "Okay, so you already know." "Yes, I'm with Patrick. Yes, we have a plan. But it wasn't all his idea, Nathan. You've been ignoring me for years, spending all your time with your damn company." Nathan shook his head. "Don't make this my fault, Elise. We may have had problems. All marriages do. But you chose betrayal over communication. You chose to cheat on me with my friend and then tried to pillage me for everything." "We're in love," Elise declared, as if that explained everything. "Patrick understands me and supports me, while you only care about your career." "Patrick's a liar," Nathan said unflinchingly. "His company is going bankrupt. His investments are failing. It's not you he's after, Elise. It's my company and my money. But you're too blind to see that." Elise's face changed. Obviously, this information was new to her. But she quickly regained her composure. "It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. The important thing is that we love each other." Nathan laughed bitterly. "Is that right? Are you sure he loves you and not my assets? In any case, it's already too late. I have taken action to protect my company and assets." "Your plan failed, Elise." A flash of fear followed by anger flashed in Elise's eyes. "You can't do that. We've been married for 15 years, and I'm entitled to my fair share. Your share will be determined by the court, taking into account your unfaithful behavior and attempted fraud." Nathan stood up. I have contacted an attorney to file for divorce. You'll get the papers tomorrow. Elise stood up as well, a challenging look on her face. You think you won? This isn't over, Nathan. I can still start by filing for divorce on the grounds of your emotional abuse dash. Too late, Nathan interrupted her. My attorney has filed motions, including evidence of your infidelity and attempted fraud. And I've contacted the police about Patrick trying to hack into my company's servers. Elise's face turned pale. You can't do that. I already did, Nathan said calmly. Your plan with Patrick is over. He turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back at the woman who had once been his wife. I'll be staying at the hotel until the legal proceedings are over. You have 1 week to move out. If you need help finding a place to stay, I'm sure Patrick would be happy to help, considering your intimacy. With those words, Nathan left the house, feeling a strange sense of relief. He knows the road ahead is full of challenges, divorce proceedings, possible court battles, the painful process of rebuilding his life. But at least now he's in control. Elise and Patrick's plot is revealed and their plans are foiled. As Nathan drives away, he sees Elise standing at the window, a look of shock and horror on her face. She obviously didn't expect things to turn so quickly. Nathan knows that this is just the beginning. The real battle had not yet begun, but he was ready. The morning after his confrontation with Elise, Nathan wakes up feeling a strange sense of calm. Though the scenes from the night before still replayed in his mind, he knew he had made the right decision. He arrived early at Marcus's office to find the lawyer already waiting for him. Everything's ready, Marcus said as he handed Nathan a stack of papers. The divorce petition has been filed, and the court has scheduled a preliminary hearing. We have also prepared a temporary restraining order preventing Elise or Patrick from accessing any of the company's assets or documents. Nathan nodded and flipped through the papers. What would her reaction be? Marcus sighed. Based on my experience, it could go either way. Either she recognizes that her plan has failed and seeks a quick settlement, or she will be more aggressive and try to find other ways to acquire assets. Which do you think is more likely? Given your description of her reaction and Patrick's background, I fear it will be the latter. They may become more desperate, especially if Patrick's finances are as bad as Derek found out. Nathan frowned. Then we need to be prepared. Just then, Nathan's cell phone rang. It's Claire calling. Nathan, she said, her voice sounding anxious. You need to return to the office immediately. Patrick just showed up here with an authorization, signed by you according to him, requesting access to all financial records and customer contracts. Nathan felt a surge of anger. They move really fast. Tell him to wait. I'll be right there. After hanging up, Nathan explained the situation to Marcus. The lawyer immediately picked up the phone. I will contact the court to expedite the restraining order. In the meantime, you go to the office to deal with the situation. Remember, stay calm and don't do anything that could be legally unfavorable to you. 20 minutes later, Nathan walked into his company building. As he took the elevator up to the floor where his office was located, he took a deep breath and prepared himself to face Patrick. The atmosphere in the office was tense and awkward. The employees kept their heads down and focused on their work, but Nathan could feel their furtive glances and whispers. Patrick is standing in the reception area, talking to an uncomfortable-looking administrative assistant. Patrick, Nathan called out calmly. We need to talk. Patrick turned around with a look of feigned surprise on his face. Nathan, you're back. I thought you were still in Seattle. Apparently so, Nathan said coldly. I'll see you in my office. Now, Patrick followed Nathan into the private office, and his attitude immediately changed as soon as the door closed. Looks like you found something, he said, with a hint of provocation in his voice. Elise told me about your little performance last night. Nathan kept his cool. The authorization was forged, Patrick. It's a criminal act. Patrick shrugged. Prove it. The surveillance video will prove that I never signed such a document. In addition, my attorney has filed a restraining order with the court prohibiting you and Elise from accessing any company assets or documents. If you continue to do so, you will face legal consequences. Patrick's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. This is just a temporary setback. Nathan, you should know that Elise knows everything about your marriage, your weaknesses, your habits, your secrets. We'll find a way. Nathan took a step forward and lowered his voice. You've made a fatal mistake, Patrick. You underestimate me. You think I'm just a husband to be bullied, a target you can easily manipulate. But you're forgetting one thing. There's a reason I built a successful company. I know how to protect my interests and how to respond to threats. Patrick's expression turned serious. Is that a threat? No, it's a promise. Your plan with Elise has failed. Now, please leave my company or I will call security to escort you out. Patrick glared at Nathan, then turned toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around and said, "This isn't over, Nathan." "It's over for you," Nathan replied. After Patrick left, Nathan took a deep breath and felt a wave of exhaustion. This was just the beginning, and he knew the rest would be even harder. But he was ready to face everything. Nathan walks out of the office and sees the employees quickly return to their work, pretending nothing happened. He cleared his throat. "I realize that the scene just now may have confused everyone," he said calmly. "I would like to assure you that the operation of the company will not be affected. I am dealing with some personal issues, but these will not interfere with our work or client relationships. If anyone has any questions or concerns, my door is always open for you." The employees nodded and seemed slightly reassured by his candor and calm demeanor. Nathan signaled to Claire, and she immediately followed him back to the office. "Thank you for the warning," he said sincerely. "It could have been a lot worse without you." Claire hesitated, then asked, "This is all about Elise, isn't it?" Nathan nodded. "Yes, we're getting divorced. It's a bit complicated." "I'm so sorry," Claire said, sympathy in her tone. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "Actually, there is. I need you to help me review all corporate documents and transactions for the past 6 months and identify any anomalies. Patrick and Elise may have taken other actions that we don't know about yet." Claire nodded and got right to work. Over the next few days, Nathan practically lived in the office, working with Claire and other trusted employees to thoroughly scrutinize every aspect of the company to make sure there were no loopholes that could be exploited. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings have officially begun. As Marcus predicted, instead of seeking a settlement, Elise hired an aggressive attorney, Reynolds, who made a variety of aggressive demands, including asking for a valuation of the company and seeking half of the shares. She claimed she made significant contributions to the company's success, Marcus said in his report to Nathan. Her attorney submitted photos of a series of social events at which Elise approached clients with you, claiming she helped establish key business relationships. Nathan shook his head, feeling a pang of bitterness. Those social events, once their common pride, were now being used as a weapon against him. "Do we have enough counter-evidence?" he asked. Marcus nodded. "We have substantial evidence of infidelity, as well as evidence of attempted fraud. But I must warn you, it could be a long, hard fight." And the long battle did begin. Over the next few weeks, Nathan's life became a series of meetings, court hearings, and document reviews. He moves into a temporary apartment to avoid returning to a home filled with painful memories. Every night, he receives an update from Marcus and Derek's new findings on Patrick's background check. 3 weeks later, Derek delivered a major breakthrough. "I found Patrick's ex-wife," he told Nathan and Marcus. "She now lives in Seattle, and after some convincing was willing to talk to us. Her story is strikingly similar to your situation." Derek explained that Patrick's ex-wife, Linda, had also been the owner of a successful business. Patrick marries her and then orchestrates a series of moves to try to gain control of her company. When the plan fails, he begins to develop a relationship with the wife of her business partner, leading to a dispute between the two businesses that ultimately brings Linda's company to its knees. "Is she willing to testify?" Marcus asked eagerly. Derek nodded. "Yes, actually, she's very willing. She said it was part of her healing journey, helping other victims and holding Patrick accountable for his actions." This discovery turned the case around. With Linda's testimony, they can establish a pattern of Patrick's behavior that proves this was a long-planned scam, not just an affair. Meanwhile, Claire found another important clue in the company's records. "I went through the project proposals and contracts for the last 6 months," she reported to Nathan. "Discovered that 3 major clients had suddenly canceled their contracts, all of whom they had met at a social event introduced by Patrick. Even stranger, these clients then contracted with one of Patrick's own affiliates." Nathan frowned. "So he's been stealing our clients." "Not only that," Claire added. "Based on financial records, these customers are some of our most profitable. This looks like a calculated move to weaken the company's financial position. Nathan immediately forwarded this information to Marcus, who argued that it could constitute business interference and unfair competition. He recommended that the legal action be expanded to include not only the divorce case, but also a separate civil action against Patrick. This will increase the pressure, Marcus explains. If we can prove that Patrick not only participated in the affair, but actively sabotaged your business, the court may be more inclined to favor our asset division proposal. Nathan agreed to the strategy, even though he knew it would mean more legal fees and a longer fight. But for him, it's no longer just about the money or the company, it's about justice, about not letting Elise and Patrick get away with what they've done. Along with his legal battles, Nathan must deal with changes in his private life. As much as he tries to keep a low profile, things like this are hard to keep secret in Boston business circles. Friends begin to pick sides, some on his side, others mesmerized by Elise's version of the story. She claims that Nathan is a control freak and that indifference in the marriage has left her no choice but to seek out other relationships. Most painfully, some of their mutual friends, those who had spent countless dinners together at Nathan and Elise's home, now shunned him, apparently unwilling to get involved in the mess. Only a handful of close friends still stand by him and offer emotional support. 6 weeks later, the case saw another important development. Nathan's legal team discovered that Patrick had recently sold off several of his assets in the midst of his financial woes and appeared to be preparing for a protracted battle or possible retreat. He's cashing in, Marcus observed. It could mean he's starting to realize their plan won't work and is looking for a way back. Sure enough, a few days later, Marcus received a message from Elise's attorney proposing mediation rather than continuing the lengthy court process. She's finally realized how weak her position is, Marcus said, with a hint of satisfaction in his tone. With Linda's testimony and the evidence of corporate interference, she knows the courts are unlikely to work in her favor. Nathan considered the proposal. On the one hand, mediation might mean a quicker end to this nightmare. On the other, he wasn't sure Elise was worth such a concession. Should we accept it? He asked Marcus. Strategically, it might be wise, Marcus replied. Mediation gives us more control to set the terms rather than relying solely on a judge's ruling. But ultimately, it's up to you what kind of result you want, Nathan. Nathan thought for a moment. He wanted closure, the ability to move on. But he also wants justice, to make sure Elise and Patrick pay for their actions. Let's see what they offer first, he finally decided. But I have some bottom lines. First of all, the company is completely owned by me, no exceptions. Second, I keep my retirement account. I'm willing to be more flexible regarding the house and other assets, but those two are non-negotiable. Marcus nodded and then set up a mediation session. The day before the scheduled mediation day, Derek brought another unexpected development. I think you should take a look at this, he said, thrusting a stack of photos at Nathan. The photos show Patrick interacting intimately with another woman, a woman who is not Elise. Who's this? Nathan asked, studying the photo. Christina Lewis, a paralegal at the Reynolds law firm that's Elise's law firm, Derek explains. They've seen each other multiple times over the past 2 weeks, always in out-of-the-way locations, always acting very close. Nathan stared at the picture in disbelief. So while Elise is still fighting for their relationship and future, Patrick is already moving on to the next target? Derek shrugged. Looks that way. This pattern is consistent with his previous behavior. When one plan began to fail, he moved on to a new goal. Nathan felt a wave of mixed emotions, sympathy for Elise mixed with disgust at Patrick's vile nature. Even though Elise betrayed him, she is now a victim of Patrick's manipulation. Marcus evaluates this finding from a legal perspective. It's in our favor. If Elise finds out that Patrick betrayed her, she may be more willing to reach a settlement in your favor. Nathan pondered this information for a while and then made his decision. Bring these photos to the mediation, but don't show them immediately. Let's see what they offer before we decide whether or not to use this card. On the day of the mediation, Nathan and Marcus arrived early at the meeting place, a neutral law firm conference room. Elise and her attorney Reynolds were already there, both looking tense and exhausted. Nathan noticed that Elise's complexion was more gaunt than before, with noticeable dark circles under her eyes. The mediator, an experienced former family law judge, began by outlining the process and inviting the parties to make preliminary offers. Reynolds spoke first, presenting what appeared to be an almost pre-prepared proposal. "My client is willing to waive any direct claims against the company," he began. "In exchange, she's asking for full ownership of the house, 50% of the retirement account, and a $5 million property split." Nathan almost laughs. The offer still absurdly favors Elise, considering her infidelity and attempted fraud. Marcus calmly responded, "Given the evidence we have, including proof of Ms. Elise's infidelity and attempted fraud, this offer is completely unreasonable." Our counteroffer was that Nathan retains full ownership of the company and the retirement account, and Elise could take ownership of the house, but would be required to pay Nathan half of the remaining mortgage and receive an additional $500,000 lump sum as a final settlement. Reynolds looks ready to retort, but Elise abruptly interrupts him. "Where's Patrick?" she asked, looking both confused and angry. "He said he'd come and support me." "It's an unexpected problem." Nathan and Marcus exchanged glances, then Marcus said calmly, "Maybe this is a good time to discuss some new developments." He pulled out the photos Derek had provided and carefully pushed them to the center of the table. These were taken within the last 2 weeks. Shows that Patrick Turner had an intimate relationship with Christina Lewis, an employee in Mr. Reynolds' office. Reynolds looks shocked and embarrassed and clearly knows nothing about it. But the real reaction came from Elise. She grabbed the photo and her face turned pale, then red with anger. Her hands began to tremble. "It's impossible," she whispered. "He said he loved me. He said once the divorce is finalized, we'll be together." Nathan felt a pang of bitter satisfaction, but with it also a twinge of pity. Elise, despite what she did, is now experiencing the same shock of betrayal that he experienced a few weeks ago. Reynolds trying to control the position. "These photos are irrelevant to our discussion," he insisted. "We're here to resolve property division issues, not to discuss the behavior of third parties." But Elise didn't seem to hear. She stared at the picture with tears in her eyes. "Is this true?" She suddenly looked up at Nathan. "How long have you known?" "The picture was taken 3 days ago," Nathan replied calmly. "But based on our research, this pattern of behavior is not new to Patrick. He's done this before, developing relationships with other married women in an attempt to gain access to their assets, then moving on to new targets when the scheme starts to fail." Elise looks crushed. She turned to her lawyer. "Give me a moment," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "I need to reconsider my position." The mediator announced a 30-minute break, and Elise and her attorney left the room. Nathan and Marcus stayed behind to discuss the possible implications of this unexpected turn of events. "She looked really shocked," Nathan commented. "Maybe she really believes Patrick is sincere." Marcus nodded. "People tend to see only what they want to see. In any case, it could work in our favor. The emotional blow tends to make people more realistic about their situation." 30 minutes later, Elise returned to the room, looking much calmer, though her eyes were still red and swollen. She sat straight down and looked at Nathan, completely ignoring her lawyer's attempts to intervene. "I accept your offer," she said simply. "You keep the company and the pension, I get the house and $500,000. But I have one condition. I want you to help me with Patrick." It was an unexpected request. Nathan looked at the woman who had once been his wife and felt a complex mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and maybe a hint of sympathy. "What kind of help do you want?" he asked cautiously. "You said you had evidence that he had done something similar before. I want that evidence. I want to make sure he can't do it again, not to me, not to anyone else." Nathan thought for a moment. It's not his responsibility to help Elise, especially after her betrayal. But on the other hand, exposing Patrick's pattern of behavior and preventing him from harming others is consistent with a greater sense of justice. "I can agree to provide the information," he said finally. "But there's one condition. You need to contact the customers who canceled their contracts with my company, explain the situation, and try to salvage those relationships." Elise nodded, seemingly relieved. "I'll do it. I swear." Reynolds looks confused and upset by the turn of events, but after seeing Elise's determination, he knows it's useless to object. The attorneys for both sides began drafting the details of the settlement agreement, which was quickly agreed upon. While the paperwork was being prepared, Nathan walked over to the window overlooking the Boston skyline. He remembered the struggles of the last few months, the sleepless nights, the fear of the future, the pain of betrayal. But he persevered, not giving in to impulse or despair. Instead, he developed a plan, gathered evidence, protected his rights, and ultimately won. Nathan, Marcus' voice interrupted his thoughts. There is one thing we need to discuss. Nathan turned to face his lawyer. The evidence of Elise and Patrick's alleged business interference is very strong, Marcus explained. We can refer these to the prosecutor's office, which could trigger a criminal investigation. Do you want to do that? Nathan thought for a moment. Holding them criminally accountable would have far more serious consequences for Elise and Patrick, potentially destroying their reputations and careers completely. This was supposed to be the ultimate form of revenge. Present the evidence, Nathan finally decided. Let the justice system decide whether criminal liability is warranted. I just want to make sure they can't do the same thing to anyone else. Marcus nodded, clearly approving of the decision. As he left the mediation conference room, Nathan felt a sense of relief he hadn't experienced in weeks. While there is still a great deal of paperwork and legal procedures to complete ahead, the worst part is behind us. He'll keep his company and financial security, and Elise will face the consequences of her choices even if it's more bitter than she expected. The settlement agreement was officially signed a few days later. Nathan signed his last papers in Marcus' office, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. How does it feel? Marcus asked, handing the papers to his assistant for filing. It's like the end, and it's like the beginning, Nathan replied, taking off the wedding ring he'd been wearing and putting it in his pocket. I never thought it would end like this. Few would have predicted such a thing, Marcus said sympathetically. But you handled it well, Nathan. A lot of people would have crumbled in the face of this betrayal, but you stayed calm and thought strategically. That's why you've managed to protect your most important asset. Nathan nodded and thanked Marcus for his help and guidance. After leaving his lawyer's office, he did not go home immediately, but went to Boston Harbor, where he took a walk and thought about his next step. The past 2 months have changed him. He was no longer the man whose trust was unconditional and whose love was eternal. He became more vigilant and protective of his heart and assets. But he also learns his own strength. In the face of betrayal and deception, he is able to remain calm and take the necessary actions to protect himself. Meanwhile, Elise is going through her own transformation. As promised, she contacted the clients who had been lured away by Patrick to explain the situation. Surprisingly, 2 of the companies decided to go back to Nathan's company and terminate their contracts with Patrick affiliates. Derek continues to investigate Patrick and discovers more details about his past behavior. This information was compiled into a report that was not only given to Elise, but also anonymously provided to several key figures in the Boston business community to warn them of Patrick's pattern of behavior. It wasn't long before Patrick found himself gradually isolated in the business community, with few people willing to do business with him or invest in his projects. As for Christina, an associate at Reynolds Law, she quit after the photos surfaced and reportedly moved to the other side of town. Elise terminated her relationship with the Reynolds firm and hired a new attorney to work out the final details of the divorce. 3 months later, the divorce was officially finalized. The day Nathan receives his final judgment, he decides to throw a small party, inviting those who have supported him throughout the process: Claire, Marcus, Derek, and a handful of friends who have stood by his side during difficult times. To new beginnings, he said as he raised his glass. And lessons, however painful they may be. Claire stayed after the party to help clean up. As they sorted through the food and glasses in the kitchen, she asked, "So what's next?" Nathan thought about it. "Focus on the company. We have several new projects in the works, as well as those returning clients. There's still a lot of work to be done." "That's all?" Claire asked, sounding a little disappointed. "No. A personal plan." Nathan smiled. "No, not yet. I need some time. Trust is not easily rebuilt." Claire nodded in understanding. "Sure. But don't let this experience change you too much, Nathan. You're a good man. You deserve to be happy." Nathan smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Claire. Thank you for everything." When Claire left, Nathan stood at his new apartment window, looking out over Boston at night. This vision was different from the one he had shared with Elise before, but it symbolized a new beginning, a new perspective. He thought back to that fateful night 6 months ago when he had stumbled upon his wife's plan of betrayal. The pain and shock of that time seemed to have belonged to another life, another person. Today, despite the scars, he feels stronger, wiser, and more resilient. His phone rang, a text message from Marcus. The final judgment has been filed. It's officially over. Congratulations on pulling through. Nathan replied with a simple thank you and set his cell phone aside. Yes, he made it through, and better than he thought he would. He kept his company, his assets, and most importantly, his dignity. Elise and Patrick's plan not only fails, it bounces back and costs them both. Elise loses the partner she thought she could trust, and Patrick loses his reputation and opportunities in the business community. It's a cautionary tale, not only for those contemplating betrayal, but also for those who might be targeted. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies are those closest to us, those we trust the most. But as Nathan proves, alertness, calmness, and the right actions can turn a potential disaster into a personal victory. The wounds of betrayal take time to heal, but Nathan knows he'll be okay in the end. Stronger, more alert, maybe a little more skeptical than before, but certainly complete. For in this game of life, the best revenge is not fiery rage, but cold success, standing your ground, protecting your interests, and, ultimately, creating a new life beyond the reach of your betrayer. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.